Hi, my name is Adam Holzer, founder and master connector of Connections for Hire. I'm your host on today's show, Game Changers, and I'm proud to introduce Kerrian Fournier, founder of Vibrant Ventures. Hey, Kerrian.
Hey.
Great to see you. It's been a long time since we've really been able to do much in-person interactions.
I know. This feels good for my soul. It really does.
It's a great way to start the day off. And, you know, I have been fortunate to be following you and seeing how active you've been, everything you have going on. You really do add a smile to my day daily with all of the stuff that you're doing out there.
Yeah, you know what? Listen, there's an opportunity here, as tough as it is and as isolated as we all feel. We still have a chance, an opportunity, because of all the different mediums out there, to still be self-expressed, to still be of service. So I try, and if I make you smile, even the better. Well,
thank you very much for being my guest today on Game Changers. As you know, I'm the host of this show because I'm trying to interview, not that I'm trying, I am interviewing real professionals that are game changers in their world. And with what you bring to the table from the HR perspective, the capital perspective in regards to compensation, you know, you are, I call you the rock star. I say you're a firecracker. I would love for you to just tell us what's going on in your world right now.
So, listen, after 25 years in corporate, as you well know, I was ex-Wall Street and strategy risk consulting and even startup tech. And, I took a winding road about 8 years ago where I really delved into executive coaching and high performance coaching and kind of the softer side of Sears, the emotional intelligence aspect of who I am and what I could provide. And I'll be honest, as tough as COVID has been individually, professionally, I'm really centered and grateful that I feel like everything I am is well positioned to be profoundly of service to folks. Because there's so many really smart, high-performing folks out there that, to be frank, they're struggling. They're struggling. They feel like there's never been a bigger time where more is at stake, like professionally, personally, and they need the guidance. And it's not just the sort of fortune cookie advice, right? People transform when they fill in the gap of what they don't know. And this is happening for, people always assume it's the businesses that are like really struggling in COVID. I'm finding the same amount of stress and anxiety for the ones that are thriving, that all of a sudden there's this sort of manna from heaven, this opportunity, and how do they capitalize on it? So I'm finding on both sides of the spectrum. And so, I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful that the who I am is able to create like the what people want. So, I don't know. Even in bad times.
Well, here on Kolka Interactive, we take the platform very serious to bring real value in here. And I have to ask you this question. I call you a firecracker. I say you're a rock star. First off, when I say those things about you, you realize that you're on a stage once I introduce you like that.
Oh yeah, well the red hair should be a warning signal to all who meet me. That's just, stand back and get me a Guinness,
I see who you are. I know who you are. I've had the pleasure of working with you. When I connect you to somebody and say, you're a rock star, you're a firecracker, what is it that makes you unique to that person that, aside from Adam Holzer knowing who you are, the master connector, how is this person going to set you aside from someone that's different? Because you are very outside the box.
Yeah. You know what? I think, and it's so funny, I was thinking about that analogy, and it always puts a smile on my face when I see the email, the introduction that says rock star. Because what's cooler than that, right? But what's the essence of a rock star? Everybody always thinks of the flash and the charisma, but what they don't always think about behind a rock star is the discipline and the hours of practice, the years of tenacity and resilience, and all it takes to then step boldly and profoundly forth and to claim one's space. And so when I really think about you calling me a rock star, I've recently really started to embrace the totality of what that means. And hopefully that is representative of who I am, because I'd say about 2 years ago, after 25 years in corporate, as I mentioned, and it was great, high-powered, ego-laden positions. But you know what? I was still making myself smaller to conform to what corporations and other folks needed me to be. And so now when I get introduced under my own company, I can be authentically myself, authentically what I have to give, who I am. And I don't have to, I mean, you always have to sort of obviously modulate to whomever your potential client is or the network that you're talking to. So it's not to be tone deaf, but you still can really show up fully and authentically as oneself. And I hope that's what I bring. And I know I'm just wired to always be of service. Like, regardless of who you introduce me to, it doesn't matter if they're going to be a strategic partner or a potential client or whatever. Like, I just have fun meeting really cool people that I'm like, I know someone, or I have a book you need to read, or I have a podcast you need to listen to that will like open up their possibility and what they see. And it could be even about their kids and what they're going through in this crazy time of, school reopening. So there's a myriad of ways that we can be of service. And you always connect me to the best people, like, bar none.
I have to ask. So I think that when you're, there's a term that I use. I don't know if we're going to have to censor this or not, but I call it unfuckwithable.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that you are a superhero, and you wear a cape under the beautiful red dress, and you're rocking this cape. I have to ask you, can you tell the people on Culture Interactive what the superpower is that you're doing? Because I think from the outside looking in, it's hard to understand, but from the inside looking out, I think you can explain it so people can understand what makes you.
So I love that you bring that up, because I think for the first 20, 25 years of my career, yes, I'm that old, I think that unfuckableness or unmessable withness was my leading criteria, right? Like, I was tough and I was hungry, and I was this woman on a trading floor, derivatives trading floor, when there were hardly any women. And like, I could lean in and swing it with the guys, right? So, and not take anything seriously and intellectually keep up. And I thought, I think my ego latched onto that as my superpower. And the older I've gotten, and the more
wiser.
And wiser. Yeah. And when I say old too, like, having people who have passed, particularly recently, I treasure every birthday. Like, I never bemoan a wrinkle, but I will never bemoan my age. But I really believe the older I've gotten, my superpower is my vulnerability. My ability to show up in warts and all the things that haven't gone right in my life, and the tough times and the good times, to lead from a place of heart-centered empathy with a chaser of my intellect, right? Versus like, I'm going to outthink you, and I think really now my superpower is being able to show up with that authenticity. And the difference I used to say is, back in the day, I used to have very, very high walls for people to get like connected to me. Like, I really kept people at an arm's distance, but if they got on the other side of the wall, they could walk all over me because I didn't have clear boundaries. And now, in order to show up as my authentic self, in all my vulnerability, I say I really keep my walls down, but I'm very clear about my boundaries. Like, I know what they look like. I know what's okay and what's not okay. And in a win-win kind of way, if I feel like someone's really kind of stepping over, I just clarify. And I say, listen, this is a go, no-go line. Like, this is really how I expect to be talked to or treated, how I expect a professional relationship to really be cultivated. And it's really helped me allow to still be a very strong, I'm certainly not a shrinking violet. So it allows the two things to coexist, right? To be strong, but not necessarily tough. To be strong and vulnerable together. And I think right now that's how I try at least to show up in the world.
One of the things I know most about you is your accountability.
Yeah.
And it's not just your accountability, but it's the way that you kind of drip and trickle down the accountability. What is it about accountability that has you so hooked? Because that's where you see the real progress come from in the work that you do, I believe.
Right. I mean, I think accountability, and by the way, this doesn't mean perfection. Sometimes people, worry about, well, if I have goals or I hold myself accountable, what if I miss? And what does that mean? So when I say accountable, it's really fully taking responsibility for your intention and actions and going forth and being in action. It doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean that you'll have all the answers. It means that I'm going to show up and I'm going to be on the field playing the game. And if it doesn't work, or if I'm sick one day, then I'm going to pivot and I'm going to get back out there. And so I understand it's totally normal, particularly when I go into teams and I try and transform them. And when people hear I'm going to have accountability and I'm going to have weekly and they're going to I'm going to get judged. Like, if I fail, I'm going to get judged. And I'm like, not the same thing at all, right? Perfect example is my daughter is going to be she's a rising sophomore, and how we talk about grades. Now, this kid is a really smart kid. She's been in a gifted school up until 8th grade. Now she's in Northport High School. And listen, her first year, there was successes, and it was tough transitioning into a public school. But a grade, all it is an semblance of a couple of things. It's not your worth. It's not how smart you are. It's like, first is, did you understand the material? And if not, why? And what can you do about it? The second is, how did you study? And if it wasn't successful, why? What can you do about it? How did you take the test? If it didn't go well, why? And so it's this constant learning cycle, and it's the same diagnostic we do, whether she gets 100 or whether she gets, something much lower than that. And so I think in business, there's something very similar, because people create meaning and their own self-worth, whether they succeed or fail. And that's when they get locked down and they're afraid to take risk and they're afraid to innovate. And if there's anything I can bring to that team is to say, to take risks, to hold oneself accountable while letting go of that judgment, letting go of the meaning they infuse on that, because that's what really opens things up. Absolutely.
I know that your world includes a couple of different avenues, let's just say.
Yes. I have a plethora of various things that I do that are both great but also confusing at times.
Well, you say the word confusing, and I think that there's a misalignment or misunderstanding. I know that you specialize in compensation.
Yes.
What does that even mean?
Nerd.
How do you even say it?
I'm a nerd in HR, so I'm the one that was not afraid to open Excel. So, but all joking aside, so growing up on Wall Street, the compensation, listen, many companies, it's the number one, if not the number two expense in the entire company. So, for example, when I was in one of these major Fortune 200 companies and I was the global head of rewards, I was running like a $7 or $8 billion line item on the company, right? So now it's, whether it's big or it's 700,000 for a smaller company, but it's basically what you're investing in your human capital. It's like the people part of your business. And so what I've always, even though I joke I was the nerd in HR, because it was the numbers portion, particularly on Wall Street, because the bonuses were all they cared about, it got me at the table. It got me at the C-suite table, the board table, senior leaders, folks that unfortunately, they may have dismissed traditional HR, whether it was valid or invalid as far as the competency, the incompetence. I had a way of getting at the table, and typically what I found, and what kept me in that discipline longer than most people would have thought, is it's almost like the Trojan horse. Like, people complain about the comp, and you follow the breadcrumbs, and it's about everything else, right? It's about the leadership vision, organizational design, the career ladders, the capabilities of the staff. I mean, there's so many other things that kind of come out when you really kind of go and you investigate what's really going on. So for me, it's been like sort of this backdoor into management consulting. So, and to be frank, it is from a business perspective, it is the language, the one part of the HR that there's just business language because it's such a huge expense. But yeah, I love it. I joke. I'm a total nerd, but as much as I like the data, I like the psychology behind it. People think it's compensation is numbers. It's really ego. It's almost like behavioral economics versus like accounting. Because how do you motivate? How do you engage your organization at different levels? So yeah, I nerd out on it.
If there's one takeaway that you wanted to share on Culture Interactive today regarding anything in your expertise, whether it's advice that you're currently giving to people in your network, your clients, what would be that one takeaway that you would want them to take from this conversation today?
Yeah, you know what? I'd say it's probably from my high performance coaching practice that I'm working with folks right now. And there's two things, like I said, I'm really seeing throughout. And these are high performing, successful people who, in this environment, there's so much coming at them. I mean, they're struggling. I mean, and they realize they can't afford to struggle. They can't afford not to perform. And all I would say is give yourself some grace, right? Because when you're stressed and you're grinding and you tighten up, everything locks down, and thoughts create feelings. So they're feeling anxiety, and the anxiety and the stress creates the parameters of what you see as possible. So when you can let go, and it's not self-compassion necessarily to be woo or nice. I'm a very practical, like straight shooting kind of executive coach. the grace you give, self-compassion and letting go and easing out actually strategically, like biologically opens up your perspective to run your company or your team or your life in a more empowered and profound way. So self-compassion, lovely, nice. It's not just about that though. It really does profoundly impact your performance in your organization. So I'd say that. And for those who are still feeling like life is happening to them, and I know there's a lot stuck into like, why is this happening to me, my family, my business, all very understandable. But one of the best things that you can do to get yourself out of that funk is be of service. Just, that's the secret sauce.
Lastly, why Vibrant? Where does Vibrant come from?
So Vibrant, the name, I just have this underlying premise that to unlock individual, team, or organizational vibrancy, you have to understand your why. You have to understand where you're going and why it's important, how it is the essence of who you are to get there. And in the end, it's all about your energy. It's your mindset. It's your frame of reference that either sets you up for success or causes stress in your life. And so if you can really navigate those two, I feel organizationally or individually, there's nothing that's not possible.
I thank you so much for your wisdom, everything you shared. Really appreciate you sharing it all on Culture Interactive here today on Game Changers.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I'm sure that we will have much more continued relationship building and ongoing vibrancy throughout this.
Right, you can't get rid of a rock star, right?